Just an acknowledgement, acknowledging the Wurundjeri people, the traditional custodians of the land on which we gather today, and pay my respects to their elders, past and present. And of course, I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. I love having a two-story project within this category. So this is a development that encompasses, I can show you all the goals, pressures, processes, realities of the larger multi-res developments that we've all worked on. The desire to maximize the site, selling off the plan sales, desirability for the market, and of course returns for the developers. Interestingly, both of these units ended up being purchased by a builder who lives in the corner unit, and the inner units actually transacted twice and stuff quite well. So I guess as a starting point, we're very interested in strategies for the development of smaller residential sites in inner city Melbourne as a practice. And we're always working with developers on ways to maximize the potential for these, I guess, high value but underutilized from a development standpoint, these sites, which are usually quite interesting. And in this one, it was an opportunity for renewal. We looked at the urban grey in the context of course, narrow sites that we know in the area. And really it was about the opportunity to address the amenity by reconsidering this development pattern. It's a small move, but we found that the site boundaries were an issue, so we recombined the sites and we redrew the titles as a starting point, just to give us that extra bit of width to maximize what would be available to each parcel and to interlock them. So a bit of an unusual pattern in the context. Bit of background about the building. It's really about bringing back to life a piece of Richmond's local history. We worked closely with builder and structural engineer to really retain and protect the fragile heritage elements, especially the roof and the kind of unrelenting kind of brick walls around that were painted bright pink. So this is an old stables complex dating from 1910. And we've created 2 individual residences out of it. Worth mentioning that we started off feasibility with 4 units in a more of a typical strata type development. But really in working through the feasibility, we were able to prove that it was worth retaining a little bit more of the grain that was inherent in the street. So this is associated with Richmond Racecourse, which operated from the 1890s to 1930s. So an old stables building and the intact original building fabric comprised of 2 gable-roofed, windowless brick buildings separated by a long courtyard. The horses were brought in and out of the stables through that courtyard, so it's quite a key feature. And it actually became the starting point for us to transform the dark inward-looking stables into residential spaces. So we drew on the existing figured ground pattern and really built on that. So a series of courtyards are inserted into the solid forms to bring in light, air, pockets of greenery, and to divide and define spaces. Remembering all the time that this is a ground floor with absolutely no windows in it. So the unrelenting single-story brick wall and pitched metal roof is preserved as part of the heritage fabric. In the extension, the materiality of the roof is turned vertical and courtyards are inserted. And so the rhythm of the roofs becomes the rhythm of the standing seam. The standing seam becomes the rhythm of vertical screens at the rear of the project. And the building skin becomes a filter for the dense context. And each blade is angled to a large flow of views in and out, where appropriate, obviously protecting the amenity of sensitive private open spaces all around. So it's that challenge of overlooking that we encounter in dense sites. So the project increases residential density on a challenging inner urban block, putting 2 4-bedroom family homes on quite a tight site. And mirroring the dense surrounds, the plan compresses a series of alternating indoor and outdoor rooms into this preserved heritage fabric. The stepped party wall between the 2 and of course the redefined boundaries maximizes the width of the shared open courtyard, and the result is a more generous indoor and outdoor space for the residents. So each courtyard contains a distinct amenity, a plunge pool, a contemplative garden, and outdoor dining. And the indoor rooms really are connected as well as delineated by these outdoor spaces. So the design deals with the lack of windows on the ground floor and despite the introverted plan, it still kind of closely connects all the spaces to nature. And the design really, seeks to relieve that narrowness of the block, which is a kind of repeating motif with any attempt to develop brownfield sites within most inner city suburbs. On the first floor, the overlooking sidelines surrounding the site were mapped to generate the angles of a series of metal blades that wrap a floating glass box, allowing extensive clear glazing, natural light, whilst meeting privacy requirements. So it's a finely tuned solution. We've just carefully modulated sight lines and angled each blade to the satisfaction of City of Yarra, which is an extensive exercise, as you would imagine. So it took a lot of meetings, but we did get over the line, and we're proud to say that there are absolutely no 1700 high, 25% screening anywhere, which is a bit of a first, and I think we'll use this again, this strategy. One of the courtyards is a plunge pool, which brings light into the basement from above. That bit of a James Bond moment, and we've been able to kind of. Look, it is just about packing it in and making it such that we could still retain 2 units rather than the 4 that we started the feasibility with. Levels above and below are inserted around the heritage fabric. I'll kind of fly through that quickly, so you can kind of get a bit more of a sense of the building, and that's been retained. So the skylights and courtyards punctuate the space. Where it was double brick, we retained it as an exposed finish. Where it was single skin brickwork, of course, to meet code, we've lined it with new walls and joinery. And so the building really, we've transformed it, but we're really trying to retain the experiential character of the heritage fabric. This is the corner that defines Farmer and Cutter Street, and it's been there for 100 odd years, and hopefully the renewal will allow this to kind of continue to do that for a long time yet. The blank brick wall on the ground floor, this unrelenting brickwork that's been retained and restored, and then the kind of kinetic form that floats above and overhangs that, so that there's a sense of this kind of new object that's just floating above. And again, responding to that sort of density and the overlooking issues that we're constantly faced with. So you can see we've just been able to, obviously you need to look through the louvers, but it's clear glazing throughout. So we've got, we ended up with something like about, essentially about 90% glazing on the external faces of the first floor. And still obviously hitting our 6-star requirements through the louvers. Quick anecdote, I guess, with the brick walls, those of you who know this site will know that it's the pink building on the corner. It's been there forever. It's a real eyesore. But when we got a permit to strip and refinish it, the community essentially petitioned that the original brickwork be retained when we revealed it. So that was integrated into the project, and that's kind of where we find ourselves. So look, I guess in summary, the repurposing and reuse of a derelict heritage building, we're very excited about that as an approach. Obviously, it reduces the wastage of rebuilding and demolition, and it's just a kind of more sophisticated approach to sustainability that we're quite excited about. Thank you.